So our speaker today will be Cindy Mullock. Cindy serves as the state coordinator for New Jersey for the Braver Angels organization. So a couple years ago, let me tell you about Braver Angels a little bit for a moment. It's an organization of conservatives, progressives, and independents that works across the political divide to help people of all persuasions learn how to listen to each other. Sounds like a good idea. A couple of years ago, I saw some information about the Braver Angels. And so I got on their mailing list and I attended some of their workshops. And I really found what they were doing and saying to be very exciting and informative. So I talked to a few people in the old guard about it. And it turned out that everyone thought it sounded like a worthwhile organization. So that's why I invited Cindy. And so let me give you a little bit about Cindy's background. She received her law degree from Columbia Law School, her MBA from Columbia Business School, and her BA in political science and English from the University of Pennsylvania. And she was recognized as one of the New York Law Journal's rising stars. She's been the general counsel and CCO of technology and fintech companies, and a founding partner and general counsel and CCO of the wealth management business, Snowden Lane Partners. Currently, she leads and advises nonprofit organizations focused on social justice, community engagement, education, historic preservation, and the environment. And in her spare time, she also advises businesses in technology, development, fintech, and financial services. So today she'll tell us about Braver Angels and why we should all care about what they're doing and why we might want to participate in some of their activities. Cindy, you have the floor.
Good morning, Old Guard Summit. Thank you so much for your hospitality. It is really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And thank you for the music as well. It was beautiful, and for the humor. I've been so impressed. This is such a special organization. I've been so impressed by your coordination and organization from when Jim and I first started talking to your technology. So it's been in very good hands with Joel here. And Jim, yeah, let's hear it for Joel and for the whole group on technology. And also for Jim is extraordinary in his organization and his hospitality and having me join today. So thank you for that. As Jim said, I'm the New Jersey State coordinator of Braver Angels, and we are a national nonprofit group dedicated to depolarization of our political conversations, engaging with curiosity across the aisle among progressives, independents, and conservatives, understanding each other as people, and not getting so caught up in entrenchment. And Jim shared with me that we here at Summit Old Guard have people from every aspect of the political spectrum. So you guys already have a head start. You are already working together in community with each other and sharing ideas. And so that's really inspiring to see. So I would love to see, maybe by show of hands, including the people on Zoom, feel free to put your hand up as well. How many of you have engaged in a politically tense conversation in the last year? Pretty much all of us, right? And how many of you share within your family or a holiday meal, Thanksgiving dinner, space with people who think differently from you politically? And how many of you think that our country would be better off if we could engage with more empathy and with more courage and with more curiosity with each other in our conversations? Okay, great. Well, we've got a good head start already. So Braver Angels is a relatively new organization. It started in 2016 in the aftermath of the 2016 election, and with so much tension, with so many people opposed to each other, and this polarization that was often tearing apart friendships and family and communities. Abraham Lincoln once said, "I don't like that man. I must know him." And this is kind of the courage that is necessitated in this moment, right? Of so much polarization and so much partisanship that people aren't really engaging with each other in the ways that maybe we used to. And there's a deep personal cost to that. A lot of people are reporting that they have lost friendships, that they don't speak with one another anymore, friendships that they miss, family members that they miss. So there's not only the cost to our democracy and not being able to sharpen each other's ideas through our rhetoric and through our engagement, but there is this personal cost of people losing people that they care about in their lives over extremism. And this is where Braver Angels comes in, and part of the solution that we're attempting to find for our country and bettering our democracy. So we refer to something called affective polarization. Not just polarization, but affective polarization refers to this sense of polarization that entrenches itself in our emotions and in our attitudes, that makes our thinking so one-sided and extreme that we no longer engage in thoughts and in policy and in dialogue. We start judging people. And so who here has felt judged and that assumptions were made about your political stances on the basis of your engagement with a political party or political sense? A lot of times we're hearing, "Oh, you're a liberal, you must think this," or "Oh, you're a conservative, you must think this," right? And this categorization of all of us into if you believe one thing or if you associate with a group, suddenly a list of all of the thoughts and ideas that you might have in your mind are assumed. And in this same period, our thoughts about our own party have remained either stable or have increased in thinking that our own party is correct, and our engagement and interpretation of our own party, while our thoughts about the other party and this otherization have declined significantly. And we're seeing a lot of animosity, contempt, and distrust on the basis of what political party or what political ideology you're engaged in. A lot of this, of course, is fomented by media as well, that really seems to be pitting us against each other and making us unable to hear each other. We're also seeing a trend where commitment to party outstrips commitment to our policies and our ideals. We're seeing people willing to do anything to defeat the other party, including betraying our own ideals. right? Because if we defeat the other party, we're going to have power. Therefore, we can engage in any behavior. We can engage in any type of commitment in order to defeat the other party. And a lot of times that is against our better values. And also we're seeing everything is a debate instead of curiosity and engagement and asking questions and trying to learn, right? And so and then many times we're seeing people unwilling to admit few, if any, faults. So a survey was completed in 2019 that that asked people in 2018 if they would be unhappy if their child married someone of the opposite political party. This survey had been exercised over many years, and in 1960, less than 5% in either party would have been unhappy if their child married someone from the other political party. Engagement and conversation was not seen as threatening to one's own identity or as threatening to one's own family. Unfortunately, now, more recently in 2018, over a third of people in either party said that they would be unhappy if their child married someone from the other political party. So that identification with self as political party has become so strong that among Republicans, it was 35%. Among Democrats, it was 45% that said that they would be unhappy if their child married someone from the opposite political party. And so we can see why there's all this tension at our Thanksgiving dinners, right? We can see why there's all this tension in our conversations with our friendships, with our communities, with our families, because we have identified so closely with political party that it is a threat to even consider someone coming into our family from the opposite side. The good news, though, is that we actually have more in common than we think. And so a lot of times we are being divided, but that conversation so often is taking place at the extremes, the extreme 5 to 10% on one side and the extreme 5 to 10% on the other side that are carrying the conversation, right? And making it look like such polar opposites, but there's about 80% of us in the middle, somewhere along the spectrum in the middle, and so many things that we can accomplish together that don't involve these extreme political ideologies. So Braver Angels brings Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. And we have a pledge. What do we do as individuals? As individuals, we try to understand the other side, the other side's point of view, even if we don't agree with it. A lot of times people are feeling threatened by conversations because they are trying to assuage the person on the other side of the conversation. They're trying to change their mind, right? And what if we approached these conversations with curiosity, with questioning, with trying to learn something about what the other side thinks, even if that is to improve our own arguments or to improve and revise our own opinions. And as a community, in our communities, we engage with those we disagree with, looking for common ground and ways that we can work together. Another question, how many people think that our country is in a difficult state where that it's hard for us to accomplish things because people are so divided? I think it's a pretty universal thought. So in politics, we support principles that bring us together rather than divide us. And again, look for ways to find common ground and see what is possible to accomplish without polarizing and without strictly thinking about ways that that we don't agree. So within the organization of Braver Angels, at every level of our organization, red and blue leaders are equally represented. That is at the local level, we have what we call alliances. This is our name more or less for branches. And at the state level, our leadership, it's a national organization. So our national leadership, and then in all 50 states, Braver Angels is represented by both red leadership and blue leadership. And regarding race, ethnicity, and social and economic class, our constant striving is to be an organization that reflects the country we seek to serve. We seek to have a representative coalition of people who everyone in the country can see themselves reflected in the leadership and in the membership of the organization. So I mentioned that Braver Angels started in 2016. I'm going to share a little bit about our story and our timeline now, and I have a video I'm going to do a share.
Politics has always been a passionate subject, and we've always had deep political disagreements. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we've gotten to the point where people can't even talk to one another. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as bad people whose ways of thinking are dangerous and incomprehensible. They see them as level of rancor and mistrust threatens our democracy, and it makes it harder for us to move forward as a nation, regardless of who the president is.
The fact that we live in what feels like, some people call it, a cold civil war, that takes a toll on all of us.
We've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
This is one organization that's doing a lot to kind of overcome that and get people back to where we were, which is neighbors, friends, communities.
Better Angels was born in response to the crisis of polarization. We are truly bipartisan. From our staff to our funding to our board of directors, we're evenly split, half conservative, half liberal. Everything we do comes from the bottom up. We're an almost entirely volunteer-led operation. We wanted to see, could we get together a group of folks who'd voted for Trump and a group of folks who'd voted for Clinton and get them in a room together to see how can we bring people together to not get them to agree or to come to the middle, but to maybe change how they think about one another.
You know, it's funny, I think a lot of people would look at 2020 and argue that this is the least hospitable time for the work that we're doing, because we know that our politics has a tendency to bring out the worst in us. But it also is an extraordinary opportunity, because this deeper project of civic renewal, of healing the relationships that exist between the American people across the cultural and political divides, the importance of this project is going to become clearer and clearer to people over the course of this election.
A lot of people are going to have to let off steam. I really believe that it's better to do it in a productive way, where they see each other as fellow human beings. It inspires me every Better Angels debate I take part in.
When you're there in person and you have to face the person you're talking to, we remember suddenly the rules of civil discourse and kind of how we should act in society. It's something that really distinguishes this form of conversation and debate.
It's all well and good to talk about civility and being nice to people, but the missing ingredient is courage.
In 2020, we also need courage. The courage that it takes to have a difficult conversation, to put yourself out there.
What we've been saying is that this year, it's not enough to call in our Better Angels. We have to call in our Braver Angels.
The name Braver Angels captures the evolving spirit of Better Angels. We have to be willing to summon the courage to see the best in the other side, see the best in our fellow Americans.
Courage means becoming a leader in your own community who's standing up for America, not just for your political party or your tribe or folks with whom you share an identity, but standing up for something larger that we can all believe in. If we can create a large enough movement that is clamoring for a more courageous style of politics, we can change the incentives.
That's something that can only be achieved through what we call patriotic empathy, this idea that your love for your country is demonstrated in your love for your fellow American. As Braver Angels, we're able to lean into that with courage and boldness.
It will make you feel like we can serve this place, and our country can serve humanity in a way that is actually beautiful and actually does us justice.
This is not a left-wing movement, this is not a right-wing movement, but it is indeed an American movement. We still have it in us to be champions for what is right and what is graceful and what is decent here in the United States.
In this time of public health crisis, Braver Angels is taking its work online, hosting weekly online debates, virtual book discussions, concerts, skills training courses, and soon, one-on-one red-blue conversations. As Americans stay home to protect their fellow citizens, Braver Angels is bringing us together in new ways and helping us find the courage needed to transcend our partisan differences and overcome this challenge. Go to braverangels.org, sign up to join our email list, and at the end of the day, try to treat each other with respect, empathy, and find the courage needed to talk to people, even if, and perhaps especially when, you don't agree with them.
Okay, great. If you do go to braverangels.org, you're going to see a number of events. There are a lot of virtual events that are being hosted there now. There are also in-person events. Okay, so the timeline, the first red and blue workshop that was discussed in the video, that took place in 2016 in the wake of the 2016 elections. That was setting the tone for future workshops. And people who had voted for Trump, people who had voted for Clinton came together, thought that they were extraordinarily opposed in the beginning of those sessions, spent several days together going through the conceptualizations that they had of each other, of the assumptions that they were making, talked and engaged on deep levels about policies, about why they believed the things that they believed in the ideologies that they were committed to, and really started to see the other side as people and understand with empathy where they were coming from, even if they didn't change their own minds about their own thoughts. In 2017, it grew from there. It grew from that first workshop, and one of the founders of Braver Angels is actually a marriage counselor, comes from that background, and figured that our country really needs some marriage counseling, right? We are all a big family. Sorry. Yeah, feel free to shout that out. Someone was sharing something. Yeah, we are all one big family and are so divided. We have all of this talk, especially in the last few weeks, of a national divorce. So of course, all of this came out of how do we engage people who are so extremely opposed and have all of these assumptions about each other? Well, kind of the perfect framework for that is marriage counseling. So in 2017, growing from that first workshop that was based in this methodology, a number of other workshops and skills training workshops were moderated. There was training the first cohort of moderators, and there was a bus tour, the One America bus tour. And then from 2018 through 2019, there was more formal structuring of the organization, event expansion, alliances were formed at the local community level, state coordinators were introduced, and the movement grew into more of a national movement based on member demand. 2020, of course, with the election, there was more explosive growth because people were again politically engaged and engaged in all of these polarizing conversations, and a lot of media saturation and social media saturation. So lots of growth in 2020, and now from then forward through the midterms and current, we have representation in all 50 states. In New Jersey, we have one active branch, one active alliance in Morristown in Burlington County. And we are developing several other branches throughout the state of New Jersey. But we are doing a lot of work online, a lot of events in communities and neighborhoods. And there's kind of a fledgling new leadership on the local level. So again, if you go online to braveryangels.org, you'll see a lot of these workshops that are taking place, finding common ground, the red and blue workshops based on that original model from 2016 of people coming together and talking about policies, politics in a way that they can engage with one another. There are skills training workshops, skills for bridging the divide, skills for speaking. There are a couple right now that are, if you are blue and find yourself in an extensively red community, or if you are red and find yourself in an extensively blue community, how do you engage in those environments? There's one called depolarizing within. I think that's a really important starting point of kind of assessing and interrogating our own polarization, our own structures that that we have internalized. There are workshops on families and politics, depolarizing conversations about race, lots of different categories, including even there are songwriting events and workshops. Lots of programs within our communities, lots of programs face-to-face, and lots of programs that take place virtually. And this, I love talking about the results. We have been shown to reduce that affective polarization. People have come together and felt more warmth toward people on the other side. 70–80% of participants say that they have a better understanding of the other side, that they have increased feelings of warmth. These red and blue workshops, people come out of them saying they have gained significant understanding of those on the other side. 87%, 85% feel less estranged and less angry with those across the political divide. And 91% see lots of areas of commonality, common ground where we can move forward. Bridging the divide workshops, similar outcomes. 86% feel they can set a constructive tone when starting conversations with someone from the other side. 88% feel confident in expressing political views in a way that helps people on the other side hear them instead of alienating people. 94% believe they can listen to people on the other side in a way where they feel heard. And there have been academic studies outside of Braver Angels. This one in 2021 was conducted by 7 universities. And they said that this new theory of depolarization that combines both informational and emotional components such that citizens moved to empathize with an outgroup, with the other side, became more likely to internalize new information about outgroup members. So we're not so hardened and entrenched that they couldn't take in additional information. And the goal, of course, is not to change people's views, but to make sure that they're able to hear each other. So we do change views of the other person, increased warmth, increased empathy with the other person, not necessarily a change in political views. And of course, in this way, we're able to find more collaborative solutions. So here are some ways that Braver Angels has been able to reduce polarization. We find commonalities and overlaps with the other side. We see people on the other side as individuals, as people, and not as stereotypes. We don't ascribe or assume a list of what their thoughts and ideologies are. We recognize other people as worthy and their ideas as worthy, and worthy of being treated with respect and admiration. And we establish ways to work together to find common ground and even become friends. Several friends from across the political divide that I've made through Braver Angels. And so I personally find it inspiring and empowering to imagine a country that is able to come together and find common ground and move forward, working on in areas where we are able to agree. And that good national union creates better relationships. So the future vision of Braver Angels is telling a whole American story that includes all of our ideologies, continuing to scale at the grassroots level. And for New Jersey, as I said, that means that we are branching out to create more alliances and more communities and have more local engagement in person. Modeling strategic partnerships, influencing our institutions. We do engage with lawmakers as well. We engage with legislators to have more of this curiosity and empathy in our politics as well, to have braver politics, not just Braver Angels. And convening a national convention. The National Convention for Braver Angels is this summer. It's in Gettysburg. And so we will be coming together. So you can join our efforts. Please feel free to check out braverangels.org. The site is comprehensive. There are podcasts, there are videos, there's a lot that you can engage with even online. And then there are a lot of events that are happening every week, every so often. So you're able to engage with some of those. I mentioned the red-blue workshops, depolarizing within. Those are fairly frequent. So thank you so much for letting me introduce all of you to Braver Angels. I'd love to open it up to Q&A. I do have one question though. Has anybody participated in any Braver Angels events or workshops previously? And Jim, I think, has participated in several, but I don't know if anybody else had. Had anybody heard of Braver Angels before today? A few, a smattering. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you so much. I would love to open it up to Q&A, so thank you. And anyone in the chat can feel free to, anyone online can feel free to jump into the chat as well. Thanks.
A couple of quick things. This Q&A session should focus on fairly short questions. We really want to give the time to the speaker, not for you to expose your own views. It should be, say, under 1 minute. And questions should not be asked of the speaker to comment on a member's particular situation or problem. Oh, one other thing. There are 3 or 4 of us who have not yet signed in the attendance sheets on the back table. If you could do that during this Q&A session, we'll have a complete list of who was here today, and we're trying to keep records on that because it's important to the organization. Thank you.
Anybody doesn't know what I look like online. Anyway, question is, can these discussions focus in on something specific, like say abortion or race or Alabama versus Auburn?
Great question. Yes, absolutely. We actually hosted for the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Was just recent, and we hosted a film as well as a discussion of, again, both sides discussion, or actually how do we talk about issues that are so polarizing, such as abortion. So maybe there are debates, there are frequently hosted debates, but there are also models for how do we engage in the conversation. So almost a meta conversation about the policies, right? Next question.
It was a wonderful talk. I think it really points the way to how we can heal a lot of the divide. In particular, the focus seems to me to be on understanding, valuing the values of others and their principles. It's sort of like what you would like through across religions. Mm-hmm. But one of the major problems actually goes beyond that, and that is an agreement on the facts of the matter. So independent of values and principles, if we don't agree on the facts, what do we then do?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Because we are also in a time where we're living in these bubbles, right? And we get our news from different sources, and so we can't necessarily there's an open question about what the facts are. So I think it's almost that if we approach that with, where is someone else getting their information? Where am I getting my information? Just because someone has told me that that things are factual, is that accurate? Right? So I hear a lot of times that people say facts are facts, and you know, and I know all of them, right? everyone who brings up you know, the difficulty of assessing what's factual thinks that they know all of the facts, right? If we're all convinced that our news source is the right news source. So I think we all need to internalize that a little bit and question a little bit more where we're getting our facts from. And are there multiple sources that we consult?
Well, wait, let me make a comment. I interjected myself here. There's this, of course, the question of how everything you said would apply to Old Guard. And I'll tell you, we actually avoid this issue because we agree not to talk about politics at Old Guard. For better or for worse, you know, we're missing a whole dimension of engagement, I guess, but it seems to have worked out pretty well. I don't even know where most of these guys are on the political spectrum. And we seem to find plenty of other things to say. If you want to comment on that, that's fine. Otherwise, we'll go on.
Well, I think in many ways it's healthy, right? I think it's very healthy to enter into a space where you don't necessarily know how people think about politics, because it's not the reason that you're here to engage with each other. So, and sometimes when you do, again, we have it so internalized to make these assumptions about each other on the basis of politics. And isn't it nice to be surprised sometimes?
Yeah, I have been.
Muted. Bill Tittle?
Yeah, I didn't hear that. Yeah. Very interesting talk. Thank you very much. My question is, you referred to the theory of depolarization study. Is that study available to somebody?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. You referred to a study done by 7 organizations on the theory of depolarization in 2021. Is that study available?
Yes, that study is available. And I can send it through to Jim, and he can share it.
And let me just say that with regard to agreeing on facts, I think you can engage someone to agree to research the facts. And if they won't research the facts, then I'm going to move on to the next guy myself.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about facts, and I think it's important to think about perspectives, right? Because when we're looking back in history, often it is the victor that writes the history, right? And so, but now we're getting into a period where a lot more research is being done about people who weren't necessarily represented in our national story. Are those facts, or the fact, so there's a lot of complication around what is factual and what is not. And we're living in a time where we have to question ourselves about the things that I've learned since I was a child, and I accept as that is fact, that is history. Is it? So I think it takes a little bit of being open to different perspectives as well. Next question.
Yeah, thanks. I have no trouble speaking to somebody who I disagree with regard to views and even principles. But in order to have dialogue, I have to have some level of trust. Yeah. And there has to be mutually beneficial behavior going on. So I guess my question to you is, how do you get past those obstacles in order to have dialogue about views?
So that's a really important question too. Engaging in dialogue requires a level of trust that your perspective is going to be respected, that your opinions are going to be considered worthy of exploration. I guess I would ask you, have you seen that trust vary over time, over decades? And I'm getting a nod. And I think I feel that way. I feel that that engagement in political dialogue and that underlying sense that there is going to be a trust that we can have an open and exploratory conversation. We are living in a moment of where that trust has thinned significantly. And so I think at least in this, a lot of people who have come to Braver Angels are grateful for an environment where that underlying currency of trust it exists, and there's an assumption that that conversation is going to be trusted. And how do we extend that into our communities? How do we extend trust, right? How do we, and a lot of times that bravery, that courage, it takes someone to be the trusting person first, right? And to ask questions. I think a lot of times when we focus on listening and focus on asking questions with curiosity, we might remove some of the barriers of the other person's trust. They feel heard, and maybe they're more receptive to hearing us.
Thank you, Cindy. My question is about the composition of the red-blue groups, the alliances, and the national organization. Are the people on these in these alliances, let's say, do they tend to be clustered around the middle, where you might consider them moderate red, moderate blue, or do you work to get people from the ends of the political spectrum as well? And I can see that depending on how they're composed, the whole dynamic might be different one way or another.
Yeah. So reds and blues, equal representation, but are they kind of more moderate, middle of the spectrum, or do we also seek out more extreme views from both sides? I would say that this is a self-selecting audience, right? People who are interested in engaging in conversation and in hearing the other side in good faith generally probably are in that 80%, and those more extreme 5 to 10% on both sides. You have to question, is there good? Oftentimes, when there's a lot of finger pointing, when there's a lot of trying to characterize the other side in particular ways, in that extremism, often doesn't coincide with the type of good faith that is required to engage in those conversations and to listen to the other side, to give credit for good ideas to the other side. So it does kind of self-select that it's not necessarily as many, it's not on any basis of anybody being excluded. Everybody is welcome, but it is kind of a self-selecting group where if you are entering into a community where you want to make sure that you hear other perspectives, you're probably not someone who's very focused on your own bubble and a lot of times relying on misinformation or disinformation. Right. DJ online?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'll repeat this.
Thank you so much for a great talk. Really appreciate your insight about how to become depolarized and all that. I have a question, and I think I do have the answer to my question. However, John Dory doesn't want me to tell my own perspective. So the question is based on the fact that your organization started in 2016. You said that in 1960, only 5% of family would not mind their children marrying somebody else. So there's you have showed very clearly there's been a progression in the divide along the years. So my question is, what do you, or do you want to answer that question? What do you attribute this growing divide in our nation?
Great question.
Right.
What can we attribute this increased in polarization and also identification and otherization of the other side? And you mentioned you have the answer. So
yeah,
Didier, you are welcome. You are all of your perspectives are welcome, and I'm happy to join in as well. But I'm curious, what do you think?
Well, I think the Republican Party moved a little very far right, and the Democratic Party in the last 15 years, I won't mention the president we had at that time, 15 or 14 years, had a very socialistic leftist government. And so our two parties have been led by politicians that are moving far away from the center. There's another reason is the access to the internet and the false information. We now see the fact check, and who's checking the fact checks? The fact checks are not always right. So there's a lot of misinformation, and I think it's the divide of the parties. But I'm not here to to say my opinion. Have you seen those arguments?
Yeah, I would chime in and say I think our ways of socializing and our ways of receiving information, receiving news, our ways of engaging in community have all shifted significantly over this time period with the development of the internet, with the development of social media. But then even if you look down to newspapers and consolidation, we used to have a lot of local news, right? Local media. All of that has a lot of large conglomerates have come in, a lot of private equity groups and kind of more national media conglomerates that have bought up all of the local media. And so all of that has kind of turned into a lot of it has disappeared, right? Even if you look in New Jersey, Advanced Media has purchased all of these smaller local news sources. All of that has kind of come up into this conglomerate, and now they're being shut down. The DC Bureau, I'm sure everybody has heard, is just shut down as of Friday. And here we are, a few days later. So I think the way we get our news, the way we interact in community has fed us into all of these echo chambers, and we divide ourselves into, and also engaging online, you're engaging fairly anonymously. Even if your name is attached to it, you don't see the person on the other side, right? So, so that kind of interaction doesn't necessarily lead to understanding anything else about that person. So I think you've got your finger on a really important conversation, but lots of different answers to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Didier. Do we want to go with someone else online? Maybe you can suggest, Joel. Marv? And you're unmuted.
Hi, Cindy. Very intriguing presentation. So I imagined the following Braver Angels skill training workshop composed of two 4-person groups. The red group would be composed of Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan, and Tucker Carlson. The blue group would be composed of AOC, Bernie Sanders, Vice President Harris, and Rachel Maddow. How do you think that skills training workshop would work out?
Thank you for your creativity, Marv. Great question. And I think I'll just reiterate, a lot of this is self-selecting. And, I would love to be a fly on the wall for that session. And see, if people are really open to hearing the other side, engaging, and giving credit for good ideas, engaging in good faith. I think a lot of times we like to attribute views, create these straw men, right? Create these straw men that, okay, you think this, but I don't think that, and here's why I'm right. But that's not an argument. That's just some conversation that you're having with yourself, right? So I think a number of the people that you mentioned are experts in that kind of approach. What do you think?
I don't think any of them would change their minds based on the performances we've seen from them to date. And it's unfortunate, because I think the idea of braver angels could really be positive. But these fixed views and argumentative actions are very difficult and create a real political problem in this country.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think we as consumers of media, and we as consumers or listeners of political rhetoric, also have to understand that there is a lot of grandstanding, and the politicians are elected by their constituencies, right? And so what we see as their public speak may not always be the same conversation that they have behind the scenes. And let's hope, fingers crossed, that they're actually able to make more progress behind the scenes, but then also they have a certain personal brand that they need to demonstrate to maintain their audiences. So it's, the question of whether when they get together in the room, and it really is just them in the room, are they able to have that dialogue?
Thank you.
John Makeda?
Yes. Thank you, Cindy. Your organization is, I think, what we really need right now. My question is to follow up Mark Edelman's question on trust. The free and open discussion is basically part of a democratic tradition, and your organization is based on a democratic foundation. What if you are having an argument with somebody who you suspect does not believe in democratic tradition and also has some undemocratic tendencies? How do you deal with a situation where you suspect that by expressing your free opinion, it may have some more sinister effects after you had had discussion?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
By the way, I was raised in a communist country, so you perhaps can understand my.
So you've been dealing with this issue
Well,
for
I was very young
a long time.
but I have seen that. Yes, right.
Yeah, and we are seeing, a rise of some fascistic ideologies in our country as well. So I guess I take that back to questions of good faith. But it's a really good question. I don't have a simple solution for it when you have someone that you're dealing with on the other side who doesn't necessarily ascribe to what you consider to be democratic ideals, and who is looking to shift the government. Yeah.
Thank you.
Miguel. If you could unmute Miguel.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. Let me start off by just giving you a little bit about me. Some people think that I'm a left-wing Democrat, but my daughter married an African, a white African from Africa, and my son's girlfriend is from Kentucky. So I'm proof that God has a sense of humor. But in any case,
that's great.
It's difficult. I mean, if I'm in the old guard, I'm a liberal. But if I'm outside and I tell people I'm a member of the old guard, they say, "Oh, you're a conservative." Well, in any case, my question is more about how can you open a mind, because many of the people that get into a debate from the negative point of view, in my opinion, are very intransigent. They don't want to know facts. And often you find out that they don't know anything about history either, or that they are not really well versed in the principles of our own country. I mean, if you look at, somebody mentioned the platforms. If you look at the Democratic platform of 2012 and Eisenhower's platform in 1956, you'll see that they're very similar. But all of a sudden it's leftist. It's a different of a perception. A lot of times the people that are intransigent don't want to know, and they want to deal from a point of religion. They have a religion and they want to use the government to enforce their religion on the other party, not recognizing that there are other religions that have different tenets of view, or weapons, Second Amendment. If a kid in the third grade has a stick and hits somebody in the class, their solution is to give sticks to everybody in the class and solve it that way. That's a different way. So how do you deal with? Last example is if I'm in a group and somebody's wearing a red hat, if I put on a blue hat, that's divisive. Not the first red hat, but the blue hat is divisive. So how do you deal with intransigent people who either don't know, don't want to know, but they know you're wrong and they tell you what your position is before you even open your mouth?
I would say a bad approach is telling them they're wrong.
Yeah. Bingo.
A better approach might be to ask them questions about how they came to that view, where they get their information from, whether they're open to reading other information or hearing other sources. But I think, again, it is kind of a self-selecting audience, right? People, there's a large group, there's a large 80% that kind of wants to come to this engagement. And there are others that we have to work on, and maybe over time. You're not going to get it in one conversation. That's for sure. But and especially this is the important part, right? With family members, with people that you are interacting with on a continual basis. I think a lot of times listening and asking questions and developing that trust that their ideas are important, but where are they getting their information? Leads to both sides being more able to hear each other. But it sounds like your family is a good laboratory for some of these approaches. Thank you, Miguel. But you're on mute. Sorry, Miguel is following up, but
well, the primary criteria we use is that you have to have a good heart.
You have to have a good heart.
If a person has a good heart, which means, whatever you think it means, then it's possible to communicate.
That's a good message. That's a good message.
If they don't have a good heart, it's not going to make.
There you go.
You're wasting your time.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I was told it's 11:30, but we're going to extend the conversation a little bit because there's still a lot of engagement. Any other questions in the room? And I see online we have, okay, we're going to go in the room.
Is there any role for people who are already middle of the road, such as those who think neither Clinton nor Trump were competent candidates?
Lots of room. Lots of room for people who don't feel represented by candidates on either side. And truthfully, that's part of our process too, right? When it comes down to it, we don't get a middle of the road candidate that often, because the way that we come at our elections through the primary system, we're going to pick someone who's kind of presumably middle of the road on the left, someone who's presumably middle of the road on the right, and then we've got that, so it's the system is established that way. But yeah, thank you for that.
I can't imagine a tougher job than the one you have.
Thank you.
Really. The history of the United States for 250 years has been political infighting. And this thing here in the recent decade is pretty typical. So I have a solution for you, and it involves what happens in Canada. Canada has a parliamentary system where they have coalition governments, okay? So the party that gets the most votes has to get another party to join them. I've never heard of your group, but I have heard of the Moderate Party, promoted by Tom Malinowski. If we had a moderate party that was the kingmaker, unfortunately, we would have less need for you, because the Moderate Party would bring everybody to the middle, which is what we really need. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few of these, right? So there's the Moderate Party, the Forward Party. Yeah, there are a lot of different groups kind of looking at the same issues. But I think there's still going to be room for all of us. So I think there's still going to be room for talking about increasing our empathetic dialogue, regardless of whether there's a moderate party or not. Ron Hoke?
Yes, thank you very much. You've raised some very important issues, things that I think distinguish the political situation in this country now more than in the past. We have new issues. And those new issues, to me, seem to be that there is more opportunity for the extreme wings of each party to have their views emphasized in the news media and so forth. And what you're trying to do, I think, appeals primarily to the people that are not the people that are causing the problems. The people that are causing the problems are those from the extreme wing of the two political parties. So the question is, how do you get to those people? The people that I would think would be willing to join your party, your group, are not the ones that are responsible for the polarization. The polarization is due to the extreme wings of the two political parties. And that's what's different, I think, now than in the past. And that's where the problems lie. And those are the people that are least likely to join Braver Angels.
Yeah,
How do you
I
reach
think
those
it's a
people?
good point. I think it's a good point, but I think I don't think the solution is saying, well, those people have all the power, because if it really is the majority that that is willing to engage with empathy, I think we really have to think about how our media emphasizes those extreme polarities, and how much noise and how much bandwidth should they be getting, and should we all be kowtowing, or should we all be emphasizing their perspectives versus this 80-85% that is in the middle. So I agree with where the issues are. I don't agree that means that we necessarily have to change these extremists. I think it's actually, we need to change who we're emphasizing. And you can understand why in the economics of media, that we're exposed to now. Everybody wants clicks, everybody wants views, and the more extreme and polarized statements get the most views and get the most clicks, right? So I think we have to take some responsibility for how we consume media and what our expectations are of media.
Thank you.
What do you think, Ron?
I think that's a good thing, a good goal to aim for, but traditionally, the news media doesn't emphasize the good stories. They emphasize the stories that will sell papers. And unfortunately, it's well, I won't name names, but people on both ends of the political parties are the ones that get all the attention. And those are the ones that sell papers.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody agreed, and then we went home is not the best headline, right? So we don't hear that much about what we agree on.
Wait, I think I get the last chance because I told Joel that I had a question. So wait a second, guys. Wait a second. First of all, let me thank you for coming, and this is such a wonderful thing. I was going to ask a question about the relationship between what's happening in America and what's happening in other countries, and whether it's a coincidence or whether the global situation is driving it here, or whether we're making the example for the rest of the world. But I'll save that for lunch. And I just want to make this observation too, that I'm reading about you, I found out about your connection with the Harriet Tubman Museum. And I think we really should invite you back to give that talk.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. It is such a pleasure. You had such amazing questions. We could have this conversation all day. So thank you so much.
Oh, here we go again. So, well, Cindy, I think you did an excellent job of engaging the old guard, and hopefully some of them will become braver. And I'll note, when you go to the Braver Angels org website, you'll find that there's a zillion things that you can participate in, and all those nice workshops are free. So, right? So you can learn a lot from some of them, and I would highly encourage you to attend. So we have a few ways of thanking you. The certificate has an orchid on it, and you'll see the orchid, and it's because Summit was the orchid capital of the nation back in 1930 when Summit Old Guard was formed.